Another video. Today we're gonna be talking about how to write a story. As those who know me, those of you who know me, know very well. I consider I consider writing stories to be my passion, but I have yet I have yet to find the perfect story to write, and I guess this presentation will be a learning experience for me, as it will be a learning experience for you, and I hope that everyone here will be how do you say this, educated enough to be able to write a story of your own if if you're considering become to become a writer, if you're an if you're an aspiring writer like I am. So yeah, today we are going to talk about how to write a story. So let me just present my slide let me just present my slideshow, my presentation. There. So how to write a story. So how do you write a story? So here are some of the things, and here are some things that you're gonna need to know when you're considering about writing a story. May it be a book or a comic, or maybe if you're even writing the story for a video game. If you're a game developer, if you're in the storyboard team, um, this could help you. This could help you when you're when you're writing a story on your own, already writing a story on your own. And after after this, who knows, maybe your story might become a bestseller if you're writing a book, or maybe if your game would be a hit if you're writing the story for a video game. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, there's some technical difficulties. There you go. There you go. We're having a bit of the technical difficulties. There you go. So, what is a story to begin with? If we're going to learn how to write stories, we have to learn what is a story first. I know some of you will say that we all know what a story is. It's so obvious, but I don't mind. I'm gonna tell everyone the definition of a story, anyways. Um, so, what is a story? So, a story is a description, an account of characters or events, real or imaginary, told to inform or entertain. So, we have two types. We have two types of stories. We have fiction. We have fiction for imaginary characters and events, and non-fiction for stories that are derived from real events, for stories that tell real events. Non-fiction, that is non-fiction. Fiction again is for obviously characters or events that are not part of this material world, conceived merely in the mind of the author. So the so told stories are told to inform, as is the case of nonfiction stories, or to entertain, as is the case for fiction stories most of the time. So you're gonna ask, what is the difference between a story and a plot? I'm going to be telling you right now. So, what is the difference between a plot and a story? The plot explains the events that led to the story. Meanwhile, the story is the set of events shaped by the plot. These two may be different, but they are connected to each other. The plot tells tells us, the readers, the events that happened before the events of the story that led to the events of the story. This is the plot. The story is therefore part of the plot. It's the it's the um it's the events that we are it's we the events that we are tackling with, that we are viewing, and therefore it contributes to the overall plot. This is the story. So to make the story short, the plot is much broader than a story, and a story is a small, if not minuscule, part of the plot. Next, now that you know the difference between a plot and a story, let's get to writing. Let's get to writing your story. Here are the things that you will need once you think you're ready to write your story. So first of all, you need a theme. What is your story about? What is the message you are trying to get across? This this is the first thing you should consider when you're writing a story. You should consider the message that you want to get across to your audience, to your readers, and that way they will understand your story more. A story is more understandable when it has an underlying message to tell. Um, yeah, there you go. So next, after the theme, once you're done with the theme, you need the setting. The setting is the place, the the place and the time, the place and the time your story takes place. So, where does your story take place? Where do you plan to act your story out? Is it here on Earth? Is it here on our planet, or is it in another world entirely, like another planet or another galaxy, somewhere in the universe? Or it can be a real, real planet. Can be a real planet, a real galaxy, but it can also be a fictional one, as is the case for fictional stories. And next, you need characters. You need characters for your story, because without characters, the story doesn't have life. Who's gonna act your story out if you don't have characters? You need to consider their personalities. What are they like? Um, their physical appearance. You also have to consider that, important thing the most important thing here is your character's personality, um, and also their backstory. If you're planning to create a backstory for your characters, that's even more great, because it gives the character more depth, other than this character just exists in this particular setting and is acting your story out, and that's just it. And we don't if that's the case, we don't get to know the motives of your characters, why they're doing the things they do. If they don't have a backstory, you wouldn't be able to understand the characters. And a little and a little tip, the more flawed your characters are, the better, really. um you as a reader can understand the character more if they are flawed, because flaws show that the characters are also human, just like you, just like me. We all have flaws, and we have committed mistakes, and it should be the same for your character as well. The more flawed your character is, the more your audience will be able to sympathize with your character, because if your character is too perfect, like there's no flaws whatsoever, you're gonna have to deal with, a Mary Sue kind of character. A Mary Sue kind of character. By Mary Sue I mean, uh by Mary Sue I mean a character that has, no flaws, that is perfect in every way. It's not a good idea to have a Mary Sue character. I should know because I am very guilty of that. And please don't commit the same mistake as I did. Don't commit the same mistake. Don't commit the same mistake I did when I was younger, writing a story. I wrote a Ma- I wrote down a Mary Sue character, and I got shut down for it. I got shut down for it by one of my friends. I'm not gonna tell you the name. And so yeah, your characters needs to be flawed enough to be able to get the audience's sympathy. But don't make your character too flawed. Don't make your don't let the flaws of your character overshadow the good qualities that your character has. There has to be a balance between good character and bad character within a character, if you catch my drift. um, there has to be a balance between a character's good qualities and a character's bad qualities. Don't make them too perfect, like as in no flaws at all. And but don't make them too flawed either, as in they're so flawed your audience is gonna think that, oh, that character is evil. I will never sympathize with this character. And his motives are very, questionable. His motives are very questionable. I won't be able to relate to that character. Well, unless you're writing an anti-hero kind of character, um, as is the case of anti-hero characters. You can make them um, as flawed as you possibly can. But again, don't let the flaws overshadow the good qualities of your character, because an anti-hero is a hero. If you're familiar with the definition of an anti-hero, it's a hero that does not possess any heroic qualities whatsoever. They're flawed. They have done some pretty bad stuff. And but despite that, they have good intentions. They have good intentions as to why they're doing these evil things, and they make you sympathize with that character. So what I'm trying to say is, again, there has to be a balance. There has to be a certain balance with a character's good qualities and the character's bad qualities. Next, once you have the characters down, you need a plot. Um, Again, this answers the question of what's your story about? What is your story about? But in a very different way. Um, the plot answers the question of what took place before the story. What took place before the events of the story that led to the events of the story. How did your character get to where they are now? And you're gonna have to write that all down. And believe me, it's gonna be really hard to plot down a story. Even a simple story is gonna be hard to make a plot out of. But hey, at least it's gonna be worth it in the end. I promise you. Um, just just as long as you don't just as long as you don't mess up the story, please don't mess up the story, or else obviously no one's going to read it. After the plot, you need a conflict. The conflict is the driving force of the plot. Um, is your protagonist fighting against, if is your protagonist fighting against an antagonist, a bad guy? Is your protagonist struggling against nature? Is your protagonist struggling against himself? There are many types of conflicts, but I'm not gonna get into it. If you want to search up if you want to search up the different kinds of conflict in a story, you are very much free to do so after watching this video. You can you can search it up on Google, and hopefully you might find some great answers that work for you. And lastly, you're gonna need a point of view. Um, at what point of view is your story told? Is it first person? Is your protagonist telling the story in his own, in his own eyes? Is it second person? Is it another character telling the story of the protagonist? Or better yet, it's you who are the protagonist. You are the protagonist, and your every move, your every decision is being narrated by another character who has either, seen your life, seen what you have done during the events of the story. Or is it in third person point of view? Is it in third person POV? Is your character's story being narrated by a person who is not at all involved in the overall story, like an omniscient third person point of view? Or are they involved in the story? Are they involved in the story that you are writing? Either way, either way, you're gonna have to nail that. You're gonna have to nail the art of the point of view perfectly if you wish to tell your story right. So with the with these things in mind, I think you will be ready to write a story of your own. Just don't forget to consider these one, two, three, four, five, six elements of a story, and you will be good to go. It's a starter pack for pack for aspiring writers, and I guess also for myself, being an aspiring writer myself. Um, you have to consider these elements of a story carefully, because if you don't, then your story is gonna end up poorly written, and no one's gonna read that, most probably. no one is no one is going to stick around to flip the pages of your book, or stick around to play your game if you're in the storyboard team. Next, excuse me. There are many theories as to how you can write an effective story, but for me, the most comprehensive theory of them all is the Freytag's pyramid. It's very simple. As you can see here, this is the Freytag's pyramid. It's very simple. It's very simple. You don't need any any extensive understanding of the structure of the Freytag pyramid, unless you're planning to write a story, like you're an aspiring writer, again, like myself. Um, you can see you can see this structure in many works of literature, like movies, books, and again video games that run on plot based. So first off, you're gonna have to start with an exposition. You're gonna have to start with an exposition, because the exposition is supposed to be the introduction for your story. Um, this is the part. This is the part where your story begins, where you introduce the characters, where you where you introduce your characters, where you introduce the setting where your story plays out, whether your story is gonna be whether your story is gonna be short or long. This is the part where you can, explain to your readers what is going on, get them up to speed with what is happening, that led all the way to the events of the story. So yeah, that's the exposition for you. Next, you're gonna need a rising incident. This is important. The rising incident is important because this is what sets your story in motion. It's the part where something happen. It's the part where something happens, where the hero finally senses that there is a danger and that he is the only one who can stop it. This is the rising incident. And the rising incidents leads to the rising action. This is the culmination that happens throughout much of your story. Throughout much of the story, this is this is all part of the rising action. Your protagonist defeats a this is where your protagonist defeats the supporting antagonists and meets some friends, maybe even a love interest along their journey, and it all leads up to the climax. The climax is the most intense part of the story. It's supposed to be the most dramatic part of the story. The climax is, in simpler terms, the moment of truth. Your hero is now face to face with the antagonist. They're staring each other down, and now their fight begins finally. This is again the most dramatic part, and the climax needs to needs to be really emphasized. You need to emphasize how important the climax is, because again, this is the culmination of your story. This is where your plot has led your protagonist, and you better see it through. Next, after the climax, you get the falling action. The falling action. This is where your hero finally this is where your protagonist finally defeats the antagonist, and maybe the antagonist dies. Maybe the antagonist decides to change from evil to good. um this is this these are the events leading up to the resolution, the the falling action. This is where all of the tangled plot lines get straightened out, and the falling action leads all the way to the final part of your story, the denouement. The denouement is supposed to be the conclusion of your story. Um, the denouement is supposed to show how your character has changed throughout their journey, because during the exposition they were like this. They're they're not as strong as they are now. they, they're not as strong as they are now. They are still on the journey towards maturity. Here in the denouement, um this is where you can see that your protagonist, has matured greatly throughout the story. You can see the peak of the character's maturity here. Um, you will be able to see here in the about the lessons that the character has learned throughout their experience, and how these lessons have improved your character, and that is where your story that's where your story ends. Does your character does your character live happily? Does your character does your character die, or um, face an ultimate downfall in the case of tragic stories, the case of tragedy. Um, Whatever the case, this this is where you can end your story, the denouement. So here are the parts of the Freytag's pyramid. The exposition, this is the start of your story. This is the part where you introduce your characters and the setting. The rising incident, this is the important event that sets your story in motion. Um, the rising action is the events that takes place throughout most of your story. The climax is the culmination of your rising action. The falling action is where all of the messy plot lines get straightened out, and we have the denouement, which is supposed to show how the characters, most especially the protagonist, it's supposed to show how they have matured throughout their journey, throughout their adventure. So with that said, thank you for tuning into my little presentation. I hope you have learned as much as I have learned um, re- reporting this little presentation myself. That this is my this is my workshop presentation, and hopefully this will help you. Hopefully this will help you to be able to write an effective story if you are, again, an aspiring writer. Allow me to end with a quote from renowned Filipino author and public speaker, Shana Sino. So this is her quote. This is her quote that that hits so close to home for me, because she is really great. I acknowledged she is really great. I actually attended one. I actually attended one seminar, one Zoom seminar of hers, and that one quote that really the that one quote that I really took to heart is this: anyone can write a book. Anyone can write a book. Even you, even me. Anyone has the potential to be able to write a book. Anyone can anyone can you know uh, write anyone can write whatever stories they wish to write, whether it be a story about their lives, or a a story that is meant for entertainment, for as is the case for most fictional stories. um, Anyone can write a book, and who knows, yeah, and who knows, after this lesson, you may have written your very own bestseller. And thank you very much for again for tuning in to this workshop presentation. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Stay safe, everyone.